My name is Melissa Grant, and I'm 29 years old. Life can twist in ways that feel like a slap in the face. My father threw me out of the house, said I'd never amount to anything because I was a woman. Business is for men, he'd sneer, slamming the door on my dreams. I clawed my way up, built a company worth $50 million from nothing. Then, after years of silence, my family came crawling back, eyes gleaming with greed, wanting a piece of my success. The same man who disowned me now had the nerve to ask for my money to save his failing stores. Funny how fortune flips the script. If you've ever been told you're not enough, drop a comment below, hit that subscribe button, and join me to hear how I turned rejection into triumph. Let's go back to where it all started. I grew up in a small Wisconsin town where neat houses lined quiet streets, and everyone knew your name. My family, the Grants, seemed perfect to outsiders, middle-class church regulars, always smiling at the town fair. But behind our two-story home's closed doors, things were different. My father, Dennis Grant, ran a chain of 5 grocery stores he'd built from a single shop. He wore that achievement like armor, constantly bragging about rising from nothing with pure determination. To him, determination was a man's thing. Women in his eyes had no place in ambition or his precious business. From my earliest memories, I knew where I stood in the family hierarchy. My older brother Kevin, 3 years older, was the star. At 16, he was already working with Dad at the stores, learning sales and stock management. Dad would slap his shoulder, grinning, "You'll take this business places, son." Kevin ate it up, strutting like he was king. Then there was me, Melissa, stuck in the background. I was the daughter Dad barely noticed, brushed off with a grunt when I mentioned school or ideas. My younger sister Brittany, 5 years younger, was too little to see it all, but even she got warmer smiles from Dad than I ever did. My mother, Cheryl Grant, kept the family running, or tried to. She spent hours cooking, cleaning, playing the perfect wife. But when it came to challenging Dad's rules, she'd fade. Sometimes I'd catch her looking at me, eyes flickering with guilt, but she never spoke up. When I was 9, I asked why Dad favored Kevin. She stirred a pot of soup, sighed, and said, "That's how it is. Melissa, men lead, women follow." Those words stung, but I bit my tongue and stayed quiet. The one person who truly saw me was my grandmother, Virginia. She lived nearby in a cozy apartment, her shelves packed with old books and yellowed photos. When I was 10, she started giving me books about women who broke barriers. Sandra Day O'Connor, Sally Ride, Maya Angelou. They carved their own paths. She'd whisper, her voice fierce despite her trembling hands. "So can you." She made me swear not to tell Dad or Mom about the books, knowing they'd frown. I hid them under my bed, reading by flashlight until the pages frayed. Our home was a machine, efficient but icy. Every night we sat at the dining table at 6 sharp, Dad at the head, Mom beside him, Kevin and me across from each other, Brittany in her booster seat when younger. Talk centered on Dad's stores, or Kevin's wins like his decent math grade or soccer match. If I spoke up, say about an A in science, Dad would nod vaguely, then ask Kevin about sales numbers. Mom would force a smile, fiddling with her napkin, avoiding my gaze. I learned to disappear, but the hurt lingered. By 15, I was done being unseen. I'd read about local food trends, small farmers struggling to reach customers directly. An idea hit. What if Dad's stores used an app to link farmers with shoppers, skipping middlemen? It could hike profits and help the town. For weeks, I researched, sketched app designs on scrap paper, taught myself coding basics from library books. I was nervous but thrilled, thinking this might make Dad notice me. One Sunday after dinner, I steeled myself and knocked on Dad's office door. "Can I show you something?" I asked, gripping my notes. He didn't look up from his paperwork. "Be quick, Melissa." I poured out my pitch, how the app could streamline supplies, boost margins by 15%, win customer trust. I'd rehearsed for days, keeping my voice steady despite shaking hands. When I finished, I waited, heart pounding. Dad leaned back, arms crossed, and let out a harsh laugh. "An app." "From you," he scoffed, shaking his head. Business isn't for girls, Melissa. Stick to helping your mom cook. He flicked my notes across his desk, not even reading them, and turned back to his work. I stood frozen, cheeks burning. Months of effort gone in seconds. I snatched my notes and left his door slamming behind me like a gunshot. That night, I lay awake, Dad's words echoing, each one cutting deeper. But Virginia's books burned in my mind. I wasn't going to let him define me. If he wouldn't give me a shot, I'd create my own. School became my escape. I aced every class, joined debate, started tutoring kids to save cash. My grades were my fight proof. I was more than Dad's letdown. Mom saw it but said little. Once, after I won a state essay contest, she left a note under my door. I'm proud. I wanted to trust her, but her silence at dinner spoke louder. Kevin grew bolder, echoing Dad. Why bother studying so hard? He'd smirk. You'll just get married. Brittany, now old enough to feel the tension, watched me with wide eyes, too timid to speak. Virginia was my rock. When I told her about the app and Dad's dismissal, she held me tight. Your father's wrong, Melissa, she said, voice firm. He can't see what women can do, but you can. Keep pushing, build something he can't dismiss. Her words became my vow. I'd leave this house, go to college, show them all. The plan was set, and no one, not Dad's sneers, Mom's quiet, or Kevin's jabs, could stop me. That vow I made at 15 to prove them wrong carried me to 18. By my senior year, I was juggling school tutoring and late-night study sessions, all to escape the weight of Dad's dismissal. Then came the letter that changed everything. I'd been accepted to the University of Wisconsin with a partial scholarship. It wasn't enough to cover tuition and living costs, but it was a start. For the first time, I saw a path out of that cold house in Wisconsin, away from Dad's sneers and Kevin's smirks. But I needed help. Foolishly, I thought Dad might chip in. After all, he always preached about education. One Sunday, I sat him down after church. I got into Wisconsin, I said, clutching the acceptance letter. The scholarship covers half, but I need help with the rest. Dad sipped his coffee, eyes on his newspaper. Kevin's tuition comes first, he said flatly. He's studying business to take over the stores. That's the priority. I pressed harder, voice shaking. But this is my chance, Dad. I can make something of myself. He finally looked up, his gaze hard. Make something, Melissa. You'll marry, have kids. College is a waste for girls like you. Mom sat across the table, silent, twisting her wedding ring. Kevin, leaning against the counter, smirked like he'd won a prize. Brittany, now 13, stared at her plate, her fork still. The air felt thick, my chest tighter with every second. You always said education matters, I pushed, desperate. Dad slammed his mug down, coffee sloshing. For people who'll use it, he snapped. Not for you. That was it. The last thread of hope snapped. Mom wouldn't meet my eyes. Kevin's smirk widened. I left the table, my letter crumpled in my fist. That night, I couldn't sleep. Dad's words burned. College, a waste, me a waste. I wanted to scream, to beg Mom to stand up for me, but I knew she wouldn't. Instead, I called the one person who'd understand. Grandma, I whispered when Virginia answered, my voice breaking. Dad won't help me go to college. He says I don't matter. Her silence was heavy. Then she said, Melissa, you're worth more than he'll ever see. I've got $1,000 saved, take it. Go and don't look back. Her words lit a spark. I wasn't staying where I wasn't wanted. The final blow came at dinner 3 days later. The table was tense. Dad talking shop with Kevin, Mom serving roast, Brittany quiet. I'd decided to tell them I'd go to Wisconsin no matter what. I'm leaving for college, I said, voice steadier than I felt. I'll figure it out myself. Dad froze, fork midair. With what money? He scoffed. You're throwing your life away. I stood, heart racing. I'm not throwing anything away. I'm done being your disappointment. You treat Kevin like he's everything. Why can't you see me? Dad's face darkened. He stood, chair scraping. You think you're smarter than this family? If you walk out with that attitude, don't come back. His voice was ice. Mom gasped. Dennis, please, but he shot her a look and she shrank. Kevin watched, smug. Brittany's eyes welled up. I looked at Mom, begging her to say something, anything. "Melissa," she whispered, barely audible. "Listen to your father." That betrayal cut deeper than Dad's words. I turned to Brittany. "I'll always be your sister," I said softly. Then I walked upstairs, their silence deafening. I packed that night clothes, Virginia's books, a photo of me and Brittany at the fair. At midnight, I carried my bags downstairs. The house was dark, everyone in their rooms. I'd hoped stupidly that someone might stop me, apologize, ask me to stay. No one did. I left a note on the kitchen counter. "I'm gone. Don't worry." Then I stepped out, the August air cool against my face. With $1,000 from Virginia and my savings, I drove my beat-up Toyota to a cheap motel on the edge of town. Sitting on the lumpy bed, panic hit. I was 18, alone with barely enough for one semester. But Virginia's voice echoed, "Don't look back." The University of Wisconsin was a whirlwind. I moved into the cheapest dorm, a cramped room with thin walls and a flickering light. To survive, I worked 3 jobs: mornings at a campus coffee shop, afternoons shelving books in the library, weekends ringing up groceries at a local store. Sleep was a luxury, meals often instant noodles or stale bread. Winters were brutal, my coat too thin, but I pushed through. Every dollar went to tuition or books, every spare minute to studying. Failure wasn't an option. I had no safety net. School was my sanctuary. My business classes felt like home, each lecture proving I belonged. I soaked up everything: marketing, finance, supply chains, determined to outwork everyone. My grades stayed high, but the grind wore me down. Some nights I'd cry in my dorm, the weight of it all crushing. Then I'd think of Dad's sneer, Kevin's smirk, Mom's silence, and get back up. Virginia's letters kept me going. "You're building your future," she'd write. "Don't let them dim your light." Halfway through my freshman year, I took an entrepreneurship class with Dr. Judith Ramsey, a professor who'd sold a tech startup before teaching. She was sharp, no nonsense, and saw something in me. After I stayed late to ask about supply chain apps, she pulled me aside. "You're driven, Melissa," she said, eyeing me over her glasses. "But drive alone won't cut it. You need focus." I told her about my idea, a platform to connect local farmers with consumers, cutting out big distributors. It was the same app I'd pitched to Dad, refined over years. Dr. Ramsey didn't laugh. She nodded, scribbling notes. "This has legs," she said. "Let's work on it." That moment changed everything. Dr. Ramsey became my mentor, pushing me to think bigger, sharper. We met weekly, mapping out my idea, FarmLink Solutions, I called it. She taught me how to pitch, analyze markets, find gaps others missed. For the first time, someone believed in me, not my gender, not my last name, just me. But the road ahead was daunting. Building FarmLink meant money, connections, time, things I barely had. Still, I dove in, coding late nights, researching suppliers, sketching business plans. The grind was relentless, but Dr. Ramsey's faith kept me steady. By my sophomore year, FarmLink was taking shape, a rough prototype, a dream I could almost touch. But money was tight. My jobs barely covering costs. I applied for every scholarship, worked extra shifts, skipped meals to save. Dad's words haunted me. "College is a waste for girls like you." They fueled me too. I wasn't just fighting for a degree. I was fighting to prove him wrong, to build something he couldn't dismiss. The stakes were high, and I was all in. I poured everything into FarmLink Solutions, and by my senior year at Wisconsin, it was more than a dream, it was real. After graduation, I scraped together a small loan from the university's startup program, thanks to Dr. Ramsey's backing, and launched FarmLink in a tiny rented office in Madison. The first year was chaos: coding glitches, supplier mix-ups, sleepless nights. But we hit a turning point when a major grocery chain signed on, loving how our app connected their customers to local farmers. Sales climbed, users grew, and 4 years later, FarmLink was valued at $50 million. Forbes ran a feature on me, calling FarmLink a game changer for food supply chains. Standing in our sleek new office surrounded by my team, I felt unstoppable. I'd built something Dad couldn't laugh off. But success came with cracks. Amber Riley, my friend since high school, had stayed close through college. We'd shared late-night study sessions, dreams of making it big. When I hired her as FarmLink's marketing lead, I thought she'd have my back. Instead, she betrayed me. I caught her leaking our supplier data to a competitor, hoping to jump ship for a better offer. "I deserve more than being your sidekick," she spat when I confronted her. The leak cost us a major contract, forcing me to scramble to rebuild trust with partners. Firing Amber hurt. She'd been like family, but it taught me a hard lesson: not everyone cheers for your win. Then came the shock I didn't see coming. 7 years after I'd walked out of my family's house, my phone buzzed with an email from Dad. "Dear Melissa," it read, "your mother and I saw your Forbes article. We're so proud of what you've done. Let's catch up soon." Proud. The word felt like a slap. Dad, who'd called college a waste, who'd told me to stay in the kitchen, was proud. I stared at the screen, my stomach twisting. 2 days later, Mom called, her voice hesitant. "We miss you, Melissa. Come home sometime." Kevin texted, casual as ever. "Hey sis, you're killing it. Let's grab a beer." Brittany, now 20, sent a short message. "I saw your article. Can we talk?" I didn't trust it. 7 years of silence, not a single call when I was scraping by eating noodles in a freezing dorm. Now, because I was on Forbes, they remembered me. Still a part of me, the part that still ached for family, wondered if they'd changed. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet. Dad suggested dinner at a fancy restaurant in our old Wisconsin town, Neutral Ground. I spent days preparing, replaying old fights in my head, steeling myself for whatever they wanted. The night of the dinner, I walked into the restaurant, my heart pounding. They were already there. Dad at the head of the table, grayer but still commanding. Mom thinner, her smile nervous. Kevin in a suit, looking smug. Brittany, fidgeting, eyes darting to me. The air felt heavy, like it did at those old family dinners. "Melissa," Mom said, standing to hug me. I let her, but my arms stayed stiff. "You look amazing," she added. Dad nodded, forcing a grin. "Big shot now, huh?" Kevin raised a glass. "To the family star?" Brittany smiled shyly, but her hands twisted in her lap. We sat, and for a while it was small talk. Weathertown, gossip, Kevin's job managing Dad's stores. No one mentioned the past, the fight, the 7 years I'd been gone. It felt like a script, everyone playing nice. Then, halfway through the main course, Dad cleared his throat. "Melissa, we've followed your success," he said, dabbing his napkin. "FarmLink's impressive. You've got a head for business takes after me, I guess." He chuckled, but it rang hollow. I waited, sensing the shift. "We're in a tough spot," he continued, leaning forward. "The grocery store's competition's killing us. Online retail, big chains, you know how it is. We need an investment to stay afloat, $2 million. With your resources, you could help the family business. Be a partner?" Mom nodded quickly. "It'd mean so much, Melissa." Kevin jumped in. "We've got a proposal: modernize the stores, use your app, maybe." "It's a win-win." Brittany stayed quiet, eyes on her plate. My fork stopped midair. $2 million. Partner. The words landed like punches. This wasn't a reunion, it was a pitch. They hadn't missed me, they wanted my money to save Dad's failing stores. The Forbes article wasn't pride, it was a lifeline. I set my fork down, my voice calm but cold. "So that's why we're here. You need a bailout." Dad's smile faltered. "Don't twist this, Melissa. We're family. Families help each other." Mom's eyes pleaded. "We want you back in our lives." Kevin smirked. "Come on, sis, you owe us something for raising you." "Owe them." The room spun. I saw it all. Dad's sneers, Mom's silence, Kevin's taunts, 7 years of nothing. They hadn't changed. "You disowned me." I said, my voice steady despite the rage. "You told me I'd never make it because I was a girl. Now you want my money because I proved you wrong." Dad's face reddened. "Watch your tone. I built this family. You think you'd be where you are without me?" Mom whispered, "Melissa, Please, but I cut her off. No, Mom. You stood by while he threw me out. You don't get to play peacemaker now. Brittany looked up, her voice small. I didn't know it was like this. Her words caught me off guard, but Dad waved her off. Stay out of it, Brittany. I stood, pushing my chair back. I'm not your bank, I said, looking at Dad. You made your choice 7 years ago. Live with it. I turned to Brittany. If you ever need me, I'm here. Then I walked out, their stunned silence trailing me. Outside, the cool night air hit my face and I breathed deep. I'd faced them and I was still standing. The next morning, my phone buzzed again. A voicemail from Dad, his voice tight. This isn't over, Melissa. We need to talk. Family business is on the line. Then an email from Kevin attaching a proposal for the $2 million. Brittany texted, I'm sorry about last night. Can we meet alone? Amber's betrayal stung, but my family's greed cut deeper. I knew what was coming. Dad wouldn't let go easily, and I'd need to be ready for whatever he threw next. Dad's voicemail haunted me. This isn't over, Melissa. I knew he wouldn't let go, not after I'd walked out on his plea for $2 million, but I didn't expect him to stoop so low. A week after that disastrous dinner, a letter arrived from a law firm accusing me of stealing FarmLink's core idea from the family business. The claim was absurd. Dad said my app, which connected farmers to consumers, was based on his grocery store supply chain, a concept I'd taken as a teen. They demanded I pay $2 million in damages or face a lawsuit. My hands shook as I read it. This wasn't just greed, it was revenge for defying him. I called my lawyer, Sarah, a sharp woman I'd hired after FarmLink took off. It's a bluff, she said, scanning the letter. No evidence, just noise. But we need to shut it down fast. We prepared for a meeting with Dad's attorney in Madison, pulling every document from my college years, notebooks, emails with Dr. Ramsey, early code drafts. I'd built FarmLink from scratch, and I'd prove it. Still, the accusation stung. Dad wasn't just after money. He wanted to tear down what I'd made. The meeting was set in a sterile conference room, all glass walls and polished wood. Dad sat across from me, his face stone cold, flanked by his lawyer, a slick man named Greg. Kevin was there, arms crossed, smirking like he'd already won. Mom and Brittany were absent, which felt telling. Greg laid out their case, claiming I'd used confidential family business data from Dad's stores. I kept my cool heart pounding and slid my evidence across the table, hundreds of pages proving FarmLink was mine. I pitched a similar idea to my father at 15, I said, voice steady. He laughed, told me business wasn't for girls. That's the last time we discussed it. Dr. Ramsey had sent a sworn statement detailing how we'd developed FarmLink in college. My old notebooks filled with sketches and code showed years of work. Greg's confidence wavered, his eyes darting to Dad. Dad leaned forward, voice low. You think you're clever, Melissa. You wouldn't have this idea without my stores. I met his gaze. You're wrong. I built this despite you. Despite you telling me I'd never make it. You don't get to claim my work now. Sarah stepped in, calm but firm. This case is baseless. Drop it or we'll countersue for defamation. Greg muttered something and Dad's jaw tightened. They backed off, agreeing to withdraw the claim. I walked out, adrenaline pumping, but the victory felt hollow. Dad's hatred was clearer than ever. 2 days later, a letter arrived, not from a lawyer, but from Mom. It was handwritten, her cursive shaky. Melissa, it began. I've failed you. I stayed silent when your father pushed you away, too scared to stand up to him. I'm sorry for not being the mother you needed. I'm proud of you, even if I never showed it. She mentioned slipping a note under my door years ago after my essay contest win, hoping I'd feel her love. I hadn't, her silence had drowned it out. The letter ended, I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know I see you now. I read it 3 times, torn between anger and pity. Mom was trapped, but her apology came too late to heal the scars. Then Brittany reached out. Her text was frantic. Can we meet? I need your help. We arranged to talk at a quiet cafe in Madison, away from Dad's reach. She looked exhausted, her art school backpack slung over one shoulder. "Dad's gotten worse," she said, voice trembling. "He controls everything: my school, my money, my life. He wants me to quit artwork at his stores. I can't breathe, Melissa." Her eyes filled with tears. "You got out. How do I saw myself in her, trapped, desperate, yearning for freedom. "You're stronger than you know," I said, squeezing her hand. "I'll help you." I laid out a plan. I'd cover her tuition, set her up in an apartment near her school, no strings attached. "Why would you do this?" she asked, stunned. "Because you're my sister," I said. "And no one should feel caged like I did." Brittany hesitated, scared of Dad's reaction, but nodded. "I want to try." I felt a weight lift, not just for her, but for me. Helping Brittany was my way of breaking the cycle Dad had built. Back at FarmLink, I leaned on my team to keep things steady after Amber's betrayal. Marcus Lane, my first hire and now operations lead, stepped up big time. He'd started as a coder, quiet but loyal, and became my rock. "We've got this," he'd say, working late to fix supplier issues. His belief in me reminded me of Dr. Ramsey's pure no agenda. Together we pushed FarmLink forward, signing new partners, rebuilding trust. But Dad's lawsuit threat lingered, a reminder he'd strike again if he could. I met Brittany a week later to finalize her move. She'd found a small place near her campus, and I wired the first tuition payment. "Dad's furious," she admitted, clutching her coffee. "He says I'm betraying the family, just like you." I sighed. "He's wrong. You're choosing yourself, that's not betrayal." She hugged me, fierce and quick. "Thank you, Melissa. I'll make you proud." I smiled, my throat tight. "You already do." That night, I sat in my office, Mom's letter on my desk. I didn't know if I could forgive her, not yet. Her silence had cost me too much, but Brittany's courage gave me hope. Maybe I couldn't fix my family, but I could help my sister build a life free of Dad's control. And FarmLink wasn't just a business, it was my proof, my legacy. I'd fought for it, and no lawsuit, no betrayal could take that away. But I wasn't done. I had one more step to take, to make sure no one else felt trapped like Brittany and I had. Helping Brittany was my way of rewriting our story. 2 weeks after our cafe meeting, I drove to her new apartment in Milwaukee, a small but bright space near her art school. We hauled boxes up narrow stairs, laughing as we wrestled her easel through the door. I'd wired her tuition payment and set up a modest stipend, no strings, just enough for her to breathe. "I'm scared," she admitted, unpacking paints. "What if Dad comes after me?" I squeezed her shoulder. "He won't touch you. You're free now, Brittany." Her smile, tentative but real, was worth every penny. For the first time, I felt like a big sister, not just a ghost from her past. 3 months later, I got word Dad's grocery stores had folded. The chain filed for bankruptcy, assets sold to cover debts. Kevin had to find a job at a competitor, his smugness likely dented. Dad was working as a consultant, a far cry from his old throne. I didn't gloat, there was no joy in their fall. Their failure wasn't my victory. My victory was FarmLink, Brittany's freedom, the life I'd built. I thought of Dad's final email, bitter and brief. "You got what you wanted." He was wrong. I didn't want his ruin. I wanted my worth. FarmLink kept growing, and so did my chosen family, Marcus Lane. My right-hand man became more than a colleague. We'd stay late brainstorming over takeout, his quiet strength grounding me. "You're unstoppable," he'd say, grinning when we landed new contracts. My team, coders, marketers, logistics folks, felt like home. They celebrated my wins, picked me up after Amber's betrayal, stood by me through Dad's lawsuit. Dr. Ramsey, still my mentor, sent a note after Forbes ran another feature: "Keep breaking barriers, Melissa." Their faith reminded me of Virginia, whose book still sat on my shelf, her voice echoing in every choice I made. Mom started reaching out more. After her letter, we met for coffee once a month in Madison, keeping things cautious. She was different, less timid, taking classes to become a counselor. I was wrong to stay quiet, she said one afternoon, stirring her latte. I thought I was protecting the family, but I hurt you most. Her words didn't erase the past, but they cracked the wall between us. I didn't forgive her fully, not yet, but I listened. We talked about neutral things, her studies, my work, Brittany's art. Sometimes we touched on the pain, small steps towards something new. Cheryl wasn't the mother I'd needed as a kid, but maybe she could be someone I'd know as an adult. Brittany thrived in Milwaukee. Her first art show 6 months after moving was a quiet triumph. I stood in the gallery staring at her bold canvases, pride swelling. She hugged me, whispering, "I wouldn't be here without you." I thought of our old house, the dinner table where we'd both felt small. Now we were writing our own stories. Brittany visited often, crashing at my place, sketching while I worked. Our bond wasn't just sisterhood, it was proof we could heal. That year, I launched the FarmLink Future Fund, a scholarship for young women facing barriers like Brittany and I had. We started small, funding 5 students in tech and arts, all from families who doubted their dreams. Each application I read felt personal stories of rejection, grit, hope. One girl, a coder from a small Wisconsin town, reminded me of myself at 18. "You're giving them wings," Marcus said when we awarded the first grants. I smiled, thinking of Virginia. She'd given me mine. Dad and I stayed estranged. His pride kept him distant, unable to admit he'd wronged me. Kevin reached out once asking for a job at FarmLink. I said no, he needed to earn his place, not ride my coattails. He didn't reply, and I didn't expect him to. Their choices weren't my burden anymore. I'd spent years chasing their approval, but now I knew my worth didn't depend on them. It never had. 10 years after leaving that Wisconsin house with nothing but $1,000 and a dream, I stood in FarmLink's headquarters, a $50 million company changing how people eat. The journey wasn't easy. Dad's sneers, Mom's silence, Amber's betrayal, that baseless lawsuit. But every scar made me stronger. My real family wasn't blood. It was Marcus, Brittany, my team, the women I lifted through the fund. They saw me, not my money or my name. If you're watching this, know your worth isn't tied to who rejects you. It's in you, waiting to be claimed. Build your life. Find your people. And when you rise, lift others with you. That's what I did. And it's what I'll keep doing. So tell me in the comments, what bias have you overcome to chase your dreams? How did you find the courage to prove them wrong?